Hi. Oh, I just around us, me too. Hi.
Well, we said we're starting at 6 o'clock.
Six o'clock, we'll call to order this meeting for interview of applicants for city attorneys. We'll have roll call. Aye.
Michelle,
Roy Henry,
Mark Crutzer, Ben Keel.
Barb Swanson, our city administrator. And before I start anything, interviewing, I'm going to make a statement. Any out first out of the audience or anybody out there, they're going to ask to be removed, or I'll have the police come in and remove them. Thank you. So we'll start first at 6 p.m. with Dick Sullivan and Brett Larson, Cipher.
Good afternoon, everybody. Brett Larson, Slitterman and Seifman. I have with me Raul Meunier, Dick Slitterman, and Justin Bruner, attorneys of our firm as well. If you want me to make a few opening remarks, I'm happy to. If you have questions you want to just jump right into, that's fine as well.
And I'll just introduce myself as Raul Meunier, and I think some of you have seen me here before at council meetings. I've been around Montrose for about 4 years or so I have a little background in it. I used to work with Sullivan and Seifman full-time many years ago, and when I understood that there was a possibility of there being a new city attorney in Montrose, I wanted to see if there was a possibility of my putting together a team and a price structure that would be better service for the city, hopefully, than maybe they've had in the past, but at the same rate. So, even though I am a paralegal and I have not taken the bar anywhere, I am actually a law school graduate. I went to the University of Michigan Law School in Ann Arbor, which is, at the time, was a top 5 law school, still maybe in the top 10, so maybe I'm a little smarter than I look. But I want to emphasize kind of the process by which this team came together. I talked to Brett and asked him, Brett, is there any possibility of Slitterman and Seifman being able to put together a team that includes me, that could provide service to the city of Montrose at a reasonable rate? Now, Slitterman and Seifman, as you may know from reading the proposal, is a relatively hard-hitting firm that deals with some pretty large clientele, mostly in corporate law. Now, of course, we're here in a municipal setting, and this is a public corporation, not a private corporation, but the law that I think the city deals with is still corporate law. The biggest differences are probably data privacy and open meetings law. I just had a chance to take a peek at this. Well, let me finish on that topic. So in any event, I asked Dick and Brett if they would consider lowering their hourly rates. Normally, Dick bills at $375 an hour, and Brett's $275. I said, I'd like you guys to come down a little bit on that. But I'd like to set up something where I, as a paralegal, could be the man who does the footwork, could be the man who bills 80, maybe 90% of the hours on this, and bill that Slitterman and Seifman's normal paralegal rate is $150. I said I want to go a little bit lower than that. Having been around the city of Montrose and having been around when the contract for attorneys was renewed most recently, I knew that the rate was somewhere in the area of $150. I said I want to go a little bit lower than that. I want them to be able to basically pay exactly what they've been paying, but get service that I think is at a higher level, and also have access to a firm who has a lot of experience in litigation, in courtroom settings. Sometimes in the city of Montrose, there might be a sense or a possibility that there may be a lawsuit against the city if this happens or if that happens. Slitterman and Seifman is a firm who has spent a lot of time in courtrooms. Minnesota, but also, Brett is licensed in a couple of other states. Slitterman and Sieferman has had some pretty impressive results in litigation and has gone up against some bigger hitters, I'd say, than a lot of the folks who practice municipal law exclusively. I just had a chance, so point being, as we look at, I just saw this spreadsheet here, and I wanted to clarify that the rate for paralegal listed for Slitterman and Sieferman at $140 per hour, that's the rate at which I'll be billed. And 80+% of the hours that will be spent, I'll be the one who attends the meeting, and we've talked to the LPRB, the Lawyers Professional Responsibility Board. I, as a paralegal, can attend the meetings without difficulty. There has to be some supervision, though, and that is where Brett and Dick will come in. So, for example, if there's a question that might come up at a given council meeting on the spot, and I'm here attending, say, well, can you give us an answer on this? From the agenda, I can usually have the ability to foresee what questions might come up, so those questions could be answered on the spot. If it's something that's going to need a little research, I would do the research myself at the 140 rate. Get Brett to approval and sign off, but try to minimize the attorney hours on it. So I just want to make it clear first and foremost that the rate that Montrose would pay for this service would be $140 per hour for 80+% of the hours, maybe 90% of the hours. And I think that the city might, there might be a lot of legal activity in the next, few months. Maybe it would be more than 10 hours a month, but I think that the idea is to keep the costs exactly what they have been. And that's the package we presented. So the $225 per hour, which Dick and Brett have graciously agreed to lower their rates to, is something that would be billed for supervisory stuff and, sign off and consult. I also noticed, on the spreadsheet, it seems to say that there's no municipal experience. When I graduated Michigan Law School in 1998, I acquired about 6 years of municipal experience, not in the state of Minnesota, but in the state of Michigan. I worked for Wayne County, which is the county in which Detroit, Michigan is located, and subsequently worked for the City of Detroit City Council staff, and had 6 years altogether between City Council for Detroit is a 9-member council, a full-time council. It's a pretty busy group, and Wayne County has over 1 million people. So in 6 years working for the county of Wayne and the city of Detroit, I had an opportunity, I think, to confront most of the major municipal issues, planning, zoning, litigation, because I worked with the city attorneys for the county of Wayne and then for the city council staff for Detroit. So I think there is some good municipal experience there.
Ralph, I can add to that. Sure. Members of the firm have been asked to advise cities, advise city attorneys on land use issues, zoning issues. The city of Medina is one of the cities that we've worked with, Mr. Slitterman specifically. I had a case recently that went up to the Minnesota Court of Appeals, and we prevailed in validating city ordinance. So worked very closely with the city of Bloomington and our city attorney in doing that. So although a lot of our experience in dealing with these municipal issues is either advising the city or on the other side of the table, we have dealt with many of the issues, if not all of them, that you'll be faced with. And I think there is some benefit to the fact that we don't have these long-standing relationships with the League of Minnesota Cities. We understand very clearly who our client is. Our client would be you, the council. We have a lot of experience in dealing with private entities and differentiating between the individuals that are there representing the entities and the entity itself. And we understand very clearly who our client is, and it's the city in this instance.
So not only is there a fair amount of municipal experience between the firm and myself, but also there's some specific familiarity with the city of Montrose, as I've been around for about 4 years, and I think Brett has been involved and has attended some of the city council meetings in at least the last 2 or 3 years. So there's not going to be any kind of an introductory period where we have to brush up on what's going on with the city, because we already have some background there, and I think that's a benefit too, and frankly a potential money saver, because there's not going to be any hours that need to be built on that. And I think the municipal references, which on this spreadsheet, I think it said there aren't any. We did list city attorney for the city of Edina, Hennepin County sheriff, and also the fire marshal for the state of Minnesota. And Brett could talk in more detail about some of those cases. I know we have a limited amount of time.
I can explain for the council exactly what sorts of matters we handle with these individuals, what our experiences in dealing with them, if the council would benefit from that. There's also a name that we could add to this list, and if any of the members of the council wanted to follow up with the Sandra Graham, the city attorney for the city of Bloomington, would be happy to give favorable reference as well.
I think you just did some work with her.
I work with her very closely, and making sure that we were able to validate the Bloomington City ordinance at the district court level, which we did, and then when that decision was challenged by the opposing side at the Court of Appeals, we prevailed there as well, but worked very closely with her, and actually the law enforcement and city council and city administrators there in Bloomington to achieve that result. So,
And I think if you look at our, submission, our proposal itself, you'll see a list of accomplishments in litigation context, in actual court cases where Slyderman has been able to obtain some very impressive results against some pretty big hitters. And I think the firm has a lot of respect from opposing attorneys, certainly locally and in many cases nationally. The last thing I wanted to mention before we field any questions is that, as I've been at different city council meetings over the years, I've noticed that it might be a real service to the council to have an opportunity to meet with an attorney just prior to the regular council meetings on Monday. And I know that there are, 2 monthly now, but especially the one that's on the second Monday. It might be a real benefit to council to have someone who'd be willing to come in and spend an hour or an hour and a half before the meeting and kind of help folks if they had any questions or any issues that come up at a previous meeting and hadn't been addressed yet. So I wanted to, certainly state my willingness to do that, and that would be my pleasure. I know council oftentimes will ask the city attorney for an answer, and I don't know, if or when it comes, but I think our responsiveness level would be very high on that. And not only could we, actually respond to the questions, but also I think it'd be maybe a nice idea to meet for a little bit before council meetings, if that would be a service to council. It's certainly one that I would be privileged and proud to provide.
And that's at $140 an hour?
Say it again.
I'm sorry, that's at $140 an hour?
Well, that would be at the same rate for me. So yes, pretty much any work that, and I would be the guy doing the footwork, that's 80-90% plus, would all be 140. And by the way, I don't get to keep all that, malpractice insurance, et cetera, which all attorneys are, have to maintain. But all those hours, all my hours would all be 140. And, the whole structure of this plan is to try to create a scenario where the city can get top-notch legal service with, a very heavy-hitting firm behind it, but still pay the exact, close to the exact same rate it was paying before. And to try to keep the cost down, because I'm well aware of the fact that Montrose doesn't just have a limitless budget with which to work.
And any time that you would ask for any input from Mr. Larson, that's at $225 an hour, correct?
It would be, but the agreement that we have talked about between Brett, myself, and Dick and Justin is that their role, specifically Brett and Dick, it would be a supervisory role. So, for example, if council asked a complex legal question that required the drafting of maybe a memorandum of law in response to the question, and I spent an hour drafting it, and bill that, for $140 at my rate, Brett would read and sign off on it. Brett's a pretty fast reader because he, deals with some, a lot of heavy workload, shall we say. So that might be a 0.1 or a 0.2 hours. In other words, 6 to 12. 0.1 is 6 minutes. 0.2 is 12 minutes. So that would be billed. That 0.1 or 0.2 in this example would be billed at the 225, which, as I mentioned, is a little lower than Brett charges for his regular clients.
let me make a comment too. Mr. Meunier has worked with our firm on many different types of legal matters, litigation, transactional work. We've developed a very efficient way of working together. And any time that we can use the services of somebody to help the project that's going to bill at a lower rate and save our clients some money, we do. Anything that we can do to make the process more efficient, we do. Part of the thought in the higher billable rates with attorneys is often it's done at a more efficient rate, it's done more quickly. And the thought in putting this fee schedule together was hopefully to give you the same relative cost on a monthly, annual basis. When looking at the actual bills, you can't just look at the rates. You need to take into account what the city is actually going to pay on a monthly basis. And I may be able to do work at $225 at a cheaper rate than somebody doing work at $150. I mean, it depends on the legal issue, but
Right.
it's another variable that needs to be taken into account. And, it's hard to present that in a spreadsheet format.
Anybody else got any questions?
Going through your packet here on page 10, client conflict of interest. You represented a citizen here in town,
That's right.
Mr. Chantlin.
Absolutely, and a group called Citizens for New Montrose, with which Mr. Cantlin was associated at the time.
We represented both of those groups. They're both former clients. They don't have any current conflict of interest with the city that I'm aware of, that we're aware of. If a conflict were to arise, we would have to then step out of that situation and not represent either side if there were a conflict between the two affected parties that we represented. So
Foresee.
I don't
So
anticipate
then,
it.
so then at that point, we would be lawyerless, correct? Because if you were stepping out and being our lawyer, we wouldn't have any legal representation then.
What we would have to do is we would have to refer you to somebody who could handle it in our stead, that one limited legal issue with that one person.
So for example, if Bob, or Citizens for New Montrose, which I think is still in existence, were to decide to sue the city, that would wind up, I think litigation is separate from most of the proposals anyway, but that particular case, probably, I don't know that we'd be legally required to refer it elsewhere, but for ethical reasons, I think we'd want to refer it to a different firm. And I certainly don't see that, coming to pass. Legally, there are certain conflicts of interest where you can't represent a certain client or body because of work you've done in the past. The work that we've done with Bob and with Citizens for New Montrose is not that kind of a conflict because there wasn't ever any, litigation or that sort of thing. So it is the kind of conflict that you would call a consentable conflict, meaning if both parties are aware of it, that it doesn't create a legal hurdle. It's the kind of thing, though, that a law firm would want to take special notice of for ethical reasons and be careful to, respect. So, on the 1% chance that there winds up being litigation between either Citizens for New Montrose or Bob and the city, I think it would be ethically the right thing to do to refer it elsewhere. I think the chance of that happening is pretty darn slim, but I think that might be the one case where we would refer elsewhere. But having worked for someone in the city and a citizens group in the city, because there wasn't any direct conflict with the city of Montrose itself, it's not the kind of conflict where there's any kind of a legal hurdle. It's more of an ethical question that the law firm has to try to address in the most upright way possible.
In that direct litigation context, that's going to be outside of the scope of most of your retainers anyway. There would have to be a discussion between the law firm and the city about how to extend the scope of that retainer to include litigation. So there would have to have that, we would have to have that discussion anyway. And the discussion would just be a bit longer because we'd have to talk about exactly how we're, which law firm were to handle that if it were to come to that.
But as you might imagine, the city attorney for the city of Minneapolis, for example, or Edina might have a client who is a business person or a resident of that city, and it happens on a relatively frequent basis. If there hasn't, been a direct, it's relatively standard for attorneys for a city to also serve or have served somebody who might be living in that city. And I don't think Bob has been a client of Slitterman and Sieferman for maybe 4 or 5 months. And I am also in a position where I have done some research for him before myself in the past, and I haven't done that for a while myself either. So it is certainly a past client. And Citizens for New Montrose has been functioning without any legal advice, as far as I know, for the last 6 months or better.
The paragraph talks about an anticipated waiver. Has that been received yet, or?
I have intentionally not spoken to Bob about these proceedings. I feel that I could have it in my hand within about maybe 2 to 3 hours. If Slitterman and Sieferman is selected for this important post, I think we could have it in our hand between 2 and 3 hours. And so assuming that the next regular council meeting, I think, is a week from today, we certainly have it in hand by then in time to execute the necessary documents.
Some questions that I had, and I think our answer, just to confirm, Rao, you would be attending the meetings and at the 140 rate.
Yes, sir.
Travel time?
I think that, as you can, maybe as some of you already know, I think Saluderman and myself both, we have an interest in seeing the city of Montrose continue to make some of the headway that it's made and continue to enter into this new era where the council itself is the decision-making entity. I guess what I'm saying is, no, I wouldn't be charging for travel time because I want to keep the bills down. I think maybe some of you, those of you who might know me know that I care enough about the city to try to make it as reasonably priced as possible. That's the whole, I guess, effort behind putting together this package. So the answer is no, I would not be charging for travel time to and from city council meetings.
And you then would be confirmed that you would be the point of contact for staff and council.
Absolutely, and that doesn't mean that Brett's not accessible because I think,
Phone calls,
Yes.
staff and council.
Yes.
How does that get billed, charged?
Sorry, and emails.
And emails, yeah. That was-
well, I mean, I think technically most attorneys will, and our paralegals will bill for the time they spent. I think it will be my practice to, I don't want to say edit the bill, but I think approach billing in a way that reflects my own personal concern and the firm's concern for the city's well-being, including their financial well-being. So I guess the direct answer is, I think there's a good chance I wouldn't bill for every single minute of that. Because some of that is kind of part and parcel to what's going on. I have a general familiarity. I think the previous contract was something like, I was here at the council when they talked about it. I think Kennedy and Graven, they estimated about 10 hours a month. And I want to try to keep it right around that same level. I think there's a possibility that over the next couple, 3 months, there may be more activity than that. So the ball will be in my court to try to make the bill be as easy to digest as possible. So obviously, there's not going to be working for free, but I think that it's important to try to keep the bill low whenever possible. And I would do that by, I guess, making some considerations given that it's a municipal client.
So you would say no to the phone calls and emails?
I think I might bill for half the time that I spend on the phone, or maybe a quarter of the time. That's probably how I'd handle it.
Great. Westlaw research,
Yeah.
how much?
Well,
Hourly wage for Westlaw?
So we won't pass on any hard cost in paying the research provider. A lot of firms do, we don't.
Okay.
Obviously, any time researching will be, most if not all of that will be done by route, at the 140 rate. If something needs to be done at a different rate, I would say, in that sort of traditional paralegal work, we would try to have that, we would try to run that by someone at the city before we engage in that.
And I might just add that while I do have a whole heck of a lot of Westlaw research and figure myself as a pretty good Westlaw researcher, a lot of research that might come up won't necessarily require that kind of an online payment system. Some of the issues are going to be a little more relative to Minnesota or local law, so a lot of that can be done without actually going on Westlaw. But I like the fact that the cost for Westlaw doesn't get passed on to the client, because that can really be a tough one.
I appreciate that. On page 2 of the retainer, so it would be, let's see, 11, first page of the retainer, second page of the retainer. Okay, so about 13 pages in, it talks about, for the retainers, the representation does not include any litigation.
Appeals.
Okay, so litigation itself is covered under the proposal.
Yep. Litigation itself is covered on this. Of course, that would be at the hourly rates, and to appear in court, you have to be an attorney. So that's the sort of thing that we would have a long, hard discussion about whether or not, and how to proceed in any litigation. But any appeals, typically, you will carve that out of the scope in any appearance in any administrative hearings separate from litigation. So that's carved out here, not to say that it couldn't be added through a further motion or agreement, but it's carved out of this agreement.
Time required to come up to speed. Are we going to get charged for that? Or will it be something that the firm absorbs?
Well, I think a big bonus, to our being involved would be the fact that we are probably quite a bit more up to speed than most of the other folks against whom we're competing. I think if there's other background information that needs to be taken in, I guess I would probably do that similar to how I might do calls or emails, and might not bill my full time for it. I would make a record of it because it's important to document that, and I'm sure that something would be billed, but I think if it's that kind of a background thing, it's a little bit different from attending the council meeting. It's not the kind of thing where one necessarily is going to bill for all his time. I mean, in my case.
Training sessions, as far as open meeting law, something like that, are you guys, first of all, are you amenable to something like that? And then would you do that as a courtesy, or would we be charged?
Feel that certainly we'd be happy to do that. And I think a training session, assuming we keep it to, we discuss the scope, and we would discuss the length, and we discuss how often we're going to do these training sessions, but certainly would be willing to do something pro bono. I don't know if pro bono is the right word, but we wouldn't charge a fee for it. If it becomes something where we do it on a routine basis, or obviously then we need to revisit that.
Sure.
But certainly would be happy to do something like that without charging, because I think it makes us all more efficient if we're operating under the same understandings of the law.
Would you be willing to send out monthly emails to city staff and city council with updates as how things are progressing within, any projects that we have working with you?
I think that's absolutely, that's a good idea. The more open the communication line, the more everybody's on the same page, I think that just makes the city run that much more smoothly. The more information folks can all have at their control, so there's less questions and less wondering and less mystery, then the more effective we can all be as a team. So I think that would be a pretty fun idea.
I have one last question. There's no minimum legal contract, I understand, right? It's just basically at will.
That's right. I think either party can end the agreement whenever they choose, but other than that, I don't think that there's any specific duration in here.
There's no minimum fees, is that your question?
No duration.
Or duration?
No, there's not. It's not like a 3-year minimum length contract or anything.
No. This is the sort of thing that only works if both sides want to be in the relationship.
That's all I have.
Right. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you for your
I've
time.
got one more question
Oh, sure.
here. Raul, you made the comment that you think that there's going to be some more activity here in the near future. Curious what that activity might be.
I don't know it for certain. I just think that it seems like this is a city council where, compared to city councils past, I say there's a higher information or understanding level among council people that are here now. I'd say that there is a participation level that's a little bit different. I see council members taking a lot of their own time to do stuff for the city. I see an active city council that, and if you get a new attorney, which you apparently will, I'd say, or at least there's a 7/8 chance that you'll get somebody new in. There may be, any kind of extra assignments that you all may fill out, but I couldn't answer the question. Only you would know, only council would know what kind of activity we might be assigned to do. But when we were talking about the rates and everything, I wanted to make it clear that while I had tried to fashion a package that was based on the 10-hour monthly, $150 an hour deal that existed for the city before, and wanting to try to maintain that same price level while increasing the service level, that I couldn't foresee exactly what the hours, monthly might be. But as I say, I know that this is a group of elected officials who care very deeply about making the city continue to get better and stronger. And so
just the way you were kind of leading on, it's like there's something underlying that you
well, I think there could be.
Councilman Gill, we don't come into this with any.
I'm just, that's fine, I'm just, the way he was making his statements, I'm making an honest opinion here. And so,
Okay, yeah, we don't come in with any prejudgments or anything. The workload that we have is going to be driven completely by this council.
I'm just stating that, there were several times he commented that, some more activity, so I was just.
Sure.
Well, and certainly want to indicate availability for that, not just for, meeting before council meetings, but for being available for whatever council would want us to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Good.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you for your time.
May I just quickly ask, what's the etiquette going to be? Would it be nicer for us to stay around, or should we give a little privacy? What do we think is the appropriate thing to do here?
It's whatever you want to do.
Okay, so we can stay if we like.
Okay.
Okay.
We've already gone over by double our time, so.
Oh, sorry about that.
I just volunteer too. Since I got out of the Navy back in 1975, and even then, before then, we like government. I spent maybe a fourth of my practice on nonprofit organizations, many involved with the cities, Minneapolis Urban League, Harry Davis Foundation, advisory board to our county sheriff, I think the first lawyer, one of the first lawyers, their FBI, I don't want to mention that, can be a rough word, but Academy, have at the museum, try to look for civic-minded people and try to be that way. It's not a quest for money. I lived along the Highway 12 all my life since I was born, and played Little League Baseball, Skippy Field on Highway 7 too, but as a kid. But president of our ski club and homecoming too. But civic-mindedness is the spirit, and I think as far as competency, I was just co-chair of our launching of our submarine USS Minnesota, Norfolk. I was one of the three people in charge of putting that hoopla together in Norfolk. And with our Navy League, too, I was a national attorney, national judge advocate after 4 years of service during Vietnam. And I think, and you know it too, you can sense who's civic-minded, which attorneys, which people are like you, get a fulfillment. I think it sounds arrogant, but you mean really just serving others in the community. If we don't, who's going to? And if that means that you don't like to even mention or brag on it, it sounds corny maybe, but I'm proud of it, and just been asked to speak at the VFW and speak to other groups that are launching or submarine. So I'm very proud of that. The other thing I mentioned, but it sounds arrogant, those things you don't need to brag about. It's corny. The other thing is maybe, but I'm proud. The other thing is we have represented Rotland Homes for years before they decided to fall out of business for about 15, 20 years, and involved in every aspect of subdivision, land use planning, development, number of other people, regularly businesses working with the government. The city of Champlain years ago had a fallout with the developer who couldn't follow through, and we were called upon by the city to resurrect the city's role in that. And time after time, we've been eminent domain tax reduction proceedings, one after the other, have been heavily involved in real estate. I don't mean to monopolize your time, but I don't know if it's in our sheet as actually submitted to you, but the ultimate test sounds corny. Is does the person live a life and care about the community? But that, again, is something I don't want to be. You can make those calls, not me. But that's what I mean.
Thank you.
Corey, Mike Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'll try and put you guys back on schedule as best I can, and me on schedule. I've got to be in Albertville for a council meeting at 7, so if you don't mind if I make this brief. I am the attorney who would be your city attorney, attend all the meetings, handle all the phone calls, do the majority of the work. My partner Bob Rupi and I do work as a team, so when I'm not available, he would be available. Also, there may be times when he does some of the work on things, but I would be doing primarily the work. I think your staff anyway, I know that there's a lot of new faces here. I see one familiar face, the rest are new from when I was here last time, in terms of the council members, but your staff anyway knows our office fairly well. Our office has represented Montrose for a number of years in the past. We've got a whole wall of your files still in our office. I think your staff knows how we bill, what types of things we bill for, what types of things we don't bill for. I think if you look back, you'll see or get a good feel for the reasonableness of our charges and our representation. The way we do things at this point, we are becoming a bit more technologically advanced, if you will. Both Bob Rupi and I, our offices are our laptop computers. I will be bringing that to the meeting. I've got all my files stored on there. If you've got Wi-Fi here, I'll have access to Westlaw, which we subscribe to also, all the state statutes. It has revolutionized my practice of law. I'm able on almost every issue to give you an answer before the night's over, oftentimes within a few minutes, so there's no more, or very few times when we say I've got to wait and I'll get back to you 2 weeks from now or next month. It's pretty quick. When we're in staff meetings, oftentimes it's not unusual for me to finish a document based on what happens at the meeting and have it in the city administrator's email before the meeting is over with. So we generally try and be as efficient as we can. We represent 8 cities, a whole bunch of townships, none of which border you guys. We have no conflicts of interest. We do not represent individuals, with the one exception of condemnations in other counties and in metro cities. So we don't do any of those out in the Wright County area. You won't be seeing us with any conflicts here locally. 90% of our practice, of our billings are to either cities or townships. The other 10% comes from things like condemnation cases where we have representation. So we are very much a municipal firm. I've been in the business 23 years, representing cities all those times. My partner has been an attorney for about 23, in the municipal side for about 14. So we're very deep on municipal experience. We have not seen everything, but we've seen a lot. It is very handy. I can't always cite you the statute off the top of my head, but I usually know, one, whether the statute exists, and two, where it's at. Occasionally there's a time where I'm going to say, geez, I don't have any idea, I've got to look and start from scratch. But most of the time we've dealt with the situations you're going to see. We've got a very good system of developers agreements. You're probably, I don't know what you're currently using, but the one you were using before was based on ours. Very well up to date. We have a system of working with staff to get plans recorded properly, get all the documents in place. We pretty much integrate ourselves with your staff as best we can so that it's easier for staff, easier for us, and you have the assurance, if you will, that we're all working together, implementing your policy as you said it. With that, I'll leave my presentation and answer any questions you may have.
What is your experience with the ADA?
EDA? We have not established any EDAs in our office. Most of our cities have them established. We do work with them. Oftentimes, most of our EDAs are more of idea generators. Most of the actual purchasing of the land, the actual transactions are done by the city council. Sometimes the city council is the EDA. We do work with EDAs though on a routine basis. My experience with them has been it's much less of an involvement on the EDA side. It's just the transaction work when something comes up like a property purchase or a subsidy of a business, something like that. I don't generally advise our EDAs. They just don't require that type of legal service typically.
And you're $150 an hour?
That's correct. Meetings are $350 a meeting. That's a flat rate, no travel time. That's city council meetings.
No contract, minimum length contract?
No. In fact, oftentimes we will refer items out. Typically, you'll see us send stuff to Kennedy Graven for TIF work, for bond council work, for some of the specialized stuff that we don't do that we can't efficiently do, we will send it out to another attorney or your city attorney. Our goal is to make sure you get the best representation as cheaply as you can. And it sounds crazy, but we do refer stuff out when we can't do it cheap enough. When we've got somebody else who's going to do it more efficient, we will send it. Our job is to make sure you get the best bang for your buck.
And you've been away from Montrose for 2 years, correct?
Our office has been for 2, yes. Sarah Schwartzhoff was was the attorney who was working with Montrose at the time. I was her supervisor, if you will, coordinated with her on a number of the projects, but she predominantly did most of the work.
Okay, and I see here that it says you will not charge for, to get back up to speed?
No, it should be very short. And we typically don't when we come into cities. That ramp-up time is our time, not yours.
I understand, so then no travel time for council meetings, but yes for other meetings, like requested staff meeting or something like that.
Correct. That's correct. Typically, if there's, if you come down for a staff meeting, we would charge travel times about a half hour each way, so you'd be looking at about an hour travel time.
Phone calls, emails?
Phone calls, emails are time we put into it. I think that Barb would give you an idea of how we work that. We bill in 15-minute increments, not 6-minute increments. Typically, if we get a 5-minute phone call, it's not going to show up in your bill.
Yeah.
If we get a couple of those, we're going to aggregate them together and it'll show up as 15 minutes.
Okay.
And I think Barb can give you a better idea of how it works. There's a lot of those things, the little stuff we just don't bill for, the bigger stuff we do. Our idea is we want to make sure when you see it on the bill, that you or your staff looks at it and says, we got value for what we got billed for. That's the goal.
On the Westlaw paragraph, I'm going to have to explain it a little bit to me. The first part of it, it says that there's going to be no charge, but then in the event research outside this database would be necessary in any direct Westlaw survey. Charges arising specifically from research conducted on behalf of the city would be passed through to the city at our cost.
Correct.
Explain
that, sure. If I'm at the computer researching Westlaw, I get charged for my time. If I'm in the Minnesota database, which I'm in 99.9% of the time, we subscribe to that as an office expense. It does not get billed to the clients. For the first time, probably about 5 months ago, for the first time ever, I ended up billing a client for going out of the database because they did not have, Minnesota didn't have any cases, any statutes on the issue I needed. I had to go to a particular treatise. Westlaw charged me $40 to download that portion of the treatise. I passed that on to the client. That's the first and only time I've had to do that. Westlaw is pretty comprehensive for what we're using on the municipal side. So I don't think you're going to see those charges. If we did, it would be exactly what Westlaw bills us. We would send it back out to you. Haven't done that yet for any municipal clients.
And then on training sessions, you also have, what kind of training do you offer?
Currently, what we've been doing for the last 4 years, we've been doing training sessions for our township officers on a lot of the things that you guys would look at too. Contracting law, open meeting law, Data Practices Act issues, and you've got a lot of those here, or have had. Those are the types of trainings that we do. We put on pretty much all-day seminars for those. What we're proposing is not an all-day seminar. We could if you wanted to, but typically we would take it probably in a 2-hour chunk. We don't want to keep you here all day long, and either cover those issues that we think are things you're going to run into a lot, or issues that you're interested in. We've done that training for 4 years, probably 3 to 4 of those each year. I also present on planning and zoning with the it's not GTS, it's the basics of planning. It may be GTS, I think it is. It's on, yes. I've been doing that for 3 or 4 years now also. So it's something we do at our firm. We've been doing it, we do it all the time. We've got a lot of those presentations already prepared. We're more than happy to prepare anything you may be interested in. So typically what I've suggested is we do a couple of training sessions. If you're interested in more, we're more than willing to do it. From our perspective, the more you understand the legal side, the easier it is for us to, the easier it is for you to make your decisions and for us to be able to explain stuff as it comes up.
And that was no charge, correct?
No charge, that's correct.
Anybody else?
very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Jimmy.
Okay, next one will be Nick Roddick and Melanie Joseph Langle.
Good evening. I'm Joe Langle from Riley Prozac, Maloney. Just give you a quick spiel here since we don't have a whole lot of time. So I'm with a firm in downtown Minneapolis. We are a firm of 13 lawyers. We are a municipal-only law firm. 99% of our billings in the past, pick a year, 10, 20 years within municipal law. That's all we do. So when you're hiring a new city attorney from us, you're hiring the entire team. It's not just the person you're talking to. And we do use everybody in the firm. I've got people in the firm who specialize in labor and employment law. I've got people who are very good at the Data Privacy Act, for example. I do a lot of the land use ordinance type work. So we've got a very deep bench that we can offer a city. I'm city attorney for 8 cities. We just picked up Brainerd here recently. So we're continuing to spread out, and certainly like the opportunity to add Montrose to that as well. Just following up on a couple of things that Mike was talking about here, just so you're aware. Like a lot of firms, we'll do a free initial training, a free initial meeting and meet for the city. We've always offered that to our municipal clients. We come out either before a council meeting or some of the time it's convenient, and we walk through all the issues that are currently pending with the city. And we never charge for that. That's our deal for getting up to speed with you. We also do free trainings, just like Mike's firm does. Often the training that we give city council members focuses on data privacy law, open meeting law, the rules of procedure for the council, in case you guys have any questions and those types of things. Really just kind of refresher courses to help you do your job as council members. So. Monthly updates, we're more than happy to do those. A lot of clients ask for them. We do them ourselves anyway, so it's not a problem. We bill in a tenth of an hour, so 6-minute increments. You asked, I think, both firms so far how it works with respect to Westlaw, phone calls, emails, and another one other thing. So I'll just walk down the list here and make it quick. With respect to Westlaw, frankly, in my experience, having done this for many years, there's very little Westlaw used for cities. I mean, Westlaw for us is primarily a litigation tool. Most of the litigation can be covered by legal Minnesota cities. More of the litigation that we do directly for cities, frankly, just doesn't involve a lot there. It's just not, it's never been an issue. In terms of emails and phone calls, we bill by very small increments, 6-minute increments. We do bill our time. That's how lawyers get paid, is we spend time helping you. So that is the case here. We are trying to be very efficient, but then since this is all we do, I think we are pretty efficient, frankly. It's not often you come up with an issue that we haven't seen before or haven't seen something like it, so we tend to be fairly quick about getting back to you and getting an answer to you.
Your fee was $135 an hour, correct?
Correct. Now, in terms of your meetings, we can certainly do a flat rate, such as Mike was doing for $350 an hour. I'm not sure, since I don't have a lot of history with this city, what your need is for having an attorney at every one of your council meetings. More and more of my cities are getting away from it for one reason, and that's money. I'm the city attorney for the city of Lino Lakes, 24,000 people. I do not attend their meetings anymore. And that was at my suggestion because they're looking for a way to cut costs. Because frankly, they just didn't need me there. I would sit there and nobody would talk to me for 2 hours and then go. So why have the city spend money?
So you would do an hourly rate instead of a flat rate?
Absolutely. I actually prefer an hourly rate. I think it makes both sides be very conscious about the money being spent, the time being spent. I think that's a good thing. And that you save your money for when you really need it on those issues. When something comes up and you need an attorney, you need that assistance. And that's the way my clients have been operating. I have some very small towns, frankly, that I don't talk to for months on end, and they're quite okay with that. So But when the issue comes up and they need help, and then we bill by the hour, and that's the end of it. So it actually works very well. It's always at will. I try to avoid contracts. Somebody else before here said, it's a relationship that's got to work, and that's true. It's like marriage, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I don't care what the contract says. So if you're not happy, then we need to go our separate ways. You shouldn't feel tied down to your lawyer like that. So.
Travel time.
Travel time, typically, if you have a flat rate for a meeting, that would just be absorbed by us. And then otherwise, for other meetings, typically we would charge for travel time. At that rate, yes. Okay.
Time to come up to speed as far as,
Well, as I indicated, I'd come up here and sit down with whomever, whether that's your administrator, full council, whatever works. I just did this with the township last week. Sat down for 2 hours and went through all the hot button topics.
I wasn't quite tracking you on that one,
Yep.
and that is,
And that's free for you. Yep. Because we are municipal, by the way, we do not represent anybody with potential conflict. We don't do banks, we don't do developers, we don't represent individuals in your city. We do represent well over 150 municipalities throughout the state, cities, counties, school districts. They're everywhere. But it is very rare that we have a conflict between municipalities. So
Any in our immediate area that potentially could be?
we no longer represent the district that you are in right now, school district. So no, not that I'm aware of.
what about EDA experience?
My cities have EDAs in them, well, most of them do. I am currently in the process of consolidating HRA with an EDA, so yeah, we work in that exact area all the time. Any other questions? Now I'll just close with really emphasizing again, you're going to hear from a lot of firms, obviously 8 of them, which is quite a number for you guys to keep track of, keep separate in your minds. This is what we do. Okay, this is all we do. We are a specialty law firm. That's what allows us to have a rate as low as what we have there. So we have a lot of experience, a lot of expertise to give to you if that's what you're looking for. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you, I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming.
Mayor, council members, my name is Tom Jovanovich from the law firm of Jovanovich, Cadillac, and Othman, and with me today is Sue Cadillac. She would be the primary attorney if we'd be appointed city attorneys. We currently represent 9 different municipalities. We represent 2 school districts, as well as a Great River Regional Library. A good part of our practice, our focus is in municipal law. We've represented a number of these clients for many, many years. 2 of them I've represented for over 35 years. We've represented the city of Buffalo for almost 20 years. And if you're interested in us representing you, I would recommend that you call some of our references, because you'll get a good idea of the type of services we can provide from a third party. I myself have over 35 years of experience in municipal law, and Sue has over 14 years experience. I'll let her take over and explain what type of services we could provide to you if we're appointed.
And you're a Johnny.
Yes, I am.
My brother's a Johnny, if that matters. As Tom said, we've got a pretty good depth of experience. We do have 4 attorneys in our practice right now, with plans to add a 5th in the next 6 months. But Tom and I are the primary municipal attorneys. We do rely on our other attorneys for their depth of employment law experience, We think that adds to our municipal practice. We can draw on their expertise as well. In our years, we've seen just about everything that most cities will face, so we think we're pretty confident we can meet your legal needs, much like the previous proposals that you've heard. We also have the technology, we have Westlaw, we have smartphones. I utilize an iPad rather than a laptop, but other than that, we've got the accessibility, so we can meet your technology needs as well. As far as attendance at city council meetings, we also do not generally attend every city council meeting. We're willing to do so if that's something you feel you need, but it's just something that we also have been tailoring our practice to what our particular cities need, and most don't want an attorney or don't need an attorney at every meeting. But we're certainly there to meet with staff. We're certainly available to meet with the city council, both at the council meetings or during work sessions. We're generally available during the day if you want to schedule a work session as well. We bill to the 1/10 of an hour, and we do that because we think that meets our city's needs. We find that our billing is often lower than other cities or other firms that bill on a different schedule. Our hourly rate is fairly low, and we intend to keep that there for probably another year. So I'm going to open it up for questions. I know you probably reviewed a lot of the information we've sent in our proposal.
You just said that your rate is fairly low for at least another year, or do you anticipate maybe it's...
Well, we haven't raised it, it's been at this rate since 2009, so we wouldn't anticipate raising it until about 2016.
So travel time for all meetings other than the flat rate council meeting, basically.
Yes.
Well, actually, it's in any evening meeting, we would charge a minimum of 2 hours.
Any meeting, okay.
Right.
So
And then-
I was just
But then we would
considering that
charge
council meeting,
travel.
that would not then constitute travel time.
Correct.
Right.
But any other meeting,
During the day, then we charge travel time. That's the key thing, is daytime. Charge travel.
And the reason we do that is because you're taking away from our ability to bill other clients during the general working day. So that's why we bill during daytime travel time. We also do free trainings. This is something we routinely do for our cities when issues come up or when there have been changes in the law. We don't schedule it on a monthly or semi-monthly basis. We do it as needed, but we're certainly willing to do that for the city of Montrose.
I'm looking at your city official, city attorney relationship, and you have a chain of command here.
Yes.
So you keep it pretty equal between city council and city staff?
We let the city dictate it. Generally, you don't want all of your council members contacting the city attorney on a whim. You want some control just to keep your bills down and make sure that, you're addressing the issue in a uniform manner.
And what do you charge for like phone calls and emails and all that kind of stuff?
It's really as far as the time it takes. So if I have a 20-minute phone conversation, you're going to be billed probably 0.3 or 0.4, depending on how much of it is. How are you doing? What about this weather? Boy, those Vikings are really stinking it up today.
so no minimum contract, minimum length contract then?
No, absolutely not. No, we managed to keep our other cities without any type of fixed time frame contract, and they've been very happy with us.
What about you guys coming up to speed with
With what's going on in the city of Montrose. Again, we'd be willing to come down here, take a couple hours, talk to staff, talk to the council, and find out what's going on, what's going to be facing the city.
Right, and for some of the more recent cities that we've picked up, we've presented seminars based on the needs that the city saw. With respect to one city, open meeting law and was a big issue, so we came to them and had a seminar on the open meeting law. And as well as serial meetings, because serial meetings with computers has become a real problem for some cities.
There's new stuff out there on that.
Right.
As far as EDH Have you worked with the economic development?
Yeah.
Similar experience to what Mr. Curry enumerated. We've never set up an EDA, but we've certainly advised on bylaws changes and on property purchases and investments.
And again, we try to pool our resources here. Sue does most of the EDA work because she's a certified real property law. And in terms of employment law issues, I tend to take the lead on that. But we try to, if we have a certain area of expertise, we like to funnel that to that attorney. Another area that Sue has done a lot of work in is franchise agreements and with the cable agreements and that.
And utilities, yeah.
The only other thing on my list is the Westlaw research. How do you charge for that?
We don't charge for that.
We've never charged, and we've never really found a reason to go outside of our standard plan on municipal issues.
And saying that you only attend council meetings as we need to, if we have questions, what's the response time to get our questions answered?
It's pretty quick. I mean, I've had my cities call me at 3:45 and say, hey, I really need a memo on this. Well, by the way, I need it for our council meeting tonight at 6. So it happens. We turn it around.
It's not uncommon. And we can meet those response times in terms of coming to meetings. It's many times a call like that comes about because there is some urgent matter and they'll want us at the meeting and we can usually make that, so.
And we noted in our proposal that your scheduled meetings don't conflict with any of our existing city council scheduled meetings.
Okay. That was my last question. If we would use, if we would require you guys here for 3 or 4 months, our slot is still held open?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks for coming. Glenn Carlson, Sheldon Ritter, John James, Joseph Van.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, city staff. My name is John Thames. I am here with Firm Carson, Cullen and Schrader. We are a 6-attorney firm currently in Brooklyn Center. One thing I do need to update you on before we begin would be in the proposal we sent you, Mr. Vantoni was listed as the secondary attorney that was going to be supplementing my work while I be listed as the primary. I will still be listed as the primary, however, we were just informed since we submitted our proposal that Mr. Vantoni will be taking that position with a different firm in the next couple of weeks. As a result, David Ross from our firm will be assuming the secondary duties with me as the primary. David's been an attorney with our firm for 15 years. He's practiced primarily in the area of municipal law, both criminally and civilly, and he would be there to assist where needed. To give you a little bit of background on me, I've been with the firm for a little over 7 years. During that time, I've primarily been a prosecutor, a litigator, and an assistant city attorney to Jeff Carson, who's been doing this for about 30 years. My duties have grown a little bit, particularly the last several years, as Jeff has been more and more busy. And he's gets a little closer to retirement every year and wants to take a little bit longer vacation here and there. So my duties have grown and my experiences have as well. So this is a step forward for me to take on Montrose as my first official lead city, but I've been doing this sort of thing for the entire time I've been there. Additionally, as I said, Mr. Carson would be there as a resource for me, and with his 30+ years of experience, anything that I haven't seen that most likely he has. To give you a little bit of background on my philosophy as far as what makes a good city attorney. I guess I would compare it to the things you want in a city attorney are very similar to the things you want in a You want somebody that can relate to people and can give you things straight. You want somebody that's available to, you want somebody who is mindful of deadlines and timelines. And one of the most important things that I personally find important about a doctor and a city attorney would be that person's willingness to answer a question by saying, I don't know, but I'll find out. I think shooting from the hip can be a problem for some people. You won't find that as one of my problems. I find myself being very thorough on things, and when in my 7+ years of doing this, I've seen a lot of things, but I haven't seen everything. I don't know that anyone's ever seen everything. But what I lack in overall experience, I make up for in thoroughness and hard work. And my position is that if I don't have the answer at the snap of the finger, I can get it pretty quick. My research skills are very good, and I can get you the right answer on a timely basis with some authority when you want it. As far as questions about the proposal itself, I don't know if there were specific questions about the proposal that you have. Otherwise, I can continue to give you more philosophical statements here. But if you have questions, I'll take them now as well.
You would also be willing to give us a monthly update?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We represent currently 9 cities, 6 of them on the civil side. And some of them take advantage of this and some prefer not to. But if you'd like, we're willing to provide updates on where projects are to whomever you designate, and give you as much up-to-the-date status information as we can so that you know where projects are and that they're moving forward.
There's no flat rate for the council meetings, right? If you would attend our council meetings.
We would propose just a straight hourly rate, though we don't bill for travel time.
But I do see that you want a 3-year contract.
Correct. Yes, and it would be a commitment in both directions. I feel that you'd be having a chance to try me out, see if it's a good fit, and likewise, obviously, we're not the closest possible option for you probably, but we're in the area and we're willing to come up where we know with some of the other cities have done things in the area, as we have some other cities you probably would correspond with on a regular basis. Maple Plain comes to mind, and it's a situation where if we reevaluate at that point and we decide 2x2 or whatever else, or something needs to be changed, we can do so. But we feel that it's a fair rate that we work for, and I think that the 3-year relationship would guarantee that we're both committed to each other for that time period.
I kind of like what you had to say about your availability. My question that I've been asking everybody is, how do you charge for your phone calls and emails instead of just standard?
It'd be standard, just based on the time. Basically, it's not an availability charge or anything like that. It's exclusively what you use me for. And you need some help on an issue that you're calling about, then we talk for 20 minutes, you get billed for 20 minutes. There's no flat baseline amount or anything like that.
What about training sessions? Does your firm offer something like that?
We have in the past, and we are willing to do so. It would probably be something that we don't have anything set up currently, but as they arise, I think we can kind of address them. This is something that we see coming up on a regular basis here, so let's set something up and move forward with that. That way, we have an idea where we're not charging for things you're not that interested in or really care that much about, but we can set them up to help you where necessary.
So like, that would be a charge thing then?
Yes.
Okay.
And if needed, excuse me, can attend all of our council meetings?
I can't.
Time required to come up to speed.
I'm sorry?
The time the firm needs to come up to speed on our situation.
Oh, certainly.
Will we be charged for that?
No. To get us up to, obviously, you know, preparing work for various files and things like that, that will be billed.
Sure.
But getting to know who we're dealing with and how you guys do things, that's also, that's our time. To figure those things out, we don't pay you for that.
And the 3-year contract is non-negotiable?
We'd be open to some proposal from the city. That is our suggestion, and it's one that I've discussed with other members of the firm. So I would ask that if you would want to amend it, that I be given leave to discuss it with the other members of my firm. But certainly, I'd be willing to take anything back to them as well.
Okay.
EDA experience from the firm?
Mr. Carson was. I can't say that I'm wrong on it, but I'm willing to learn. So.
And he has the 30 years experience, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Anybody else have a question? Just to confirm, I did write down no travel time expense, right?
That's correct.
Okay. That's all I've got.
And you didn't have any extra expenses for photocopies, emails, all that kind of stuff either, right?
No.
Or what's, okay.
Did this one.
What?
Yes, okay, I'm good. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, then we got Hector Lambert, Rick.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I guess we're a little, I think you're a little ahead of schedule tonight, so.
Yes.
I know we only were scheduled for 15 minutes, so with your other applicants, I don't know if you had a presentation from us or if you just respond to things, but I certainly have a couple thoughts that you might be interested off the bat if you'd like. I'll introduce myself. I'm Andy Pratt with the firm, and we also have Nick Vivian here with me. We're both municipal attorneys at Eckberg Lammers. We've been going around and we represent about 12, 13 cities on the civil side and also on the prosecution side as well. We understand this is for civil legal services. I represent the cities of Bayport in Wyoming and Scandia, Minnesota, and I do a co-counsel with Nick on Scandia, and Nick also does Grant, Minnesota as well. But we have a nice subset of cities kind of like Montrose, in Scandia, Bayport, Grant realm. I also serve as public finance counsel to a number of cities in the state of Minnesota and Wisconsin, including the cities of Maple Plain that we drove throughout to come out here, Hanover, Glencoe, Sleepy Eye, Breckenridge, in the more rural parts of Minnesota. So that's kind of an added benefit that I can provide to the city through our law firm. I looked at the city's last bond issues today online, and you haven't done one since 2012. You did a few refundings in 2012, and like a new money bond issue in 2009, but that would be something that we can handle for you as a law firm, and I think that's something that's value added to the city versus maybe what some other applicants have. So that's something that we always like to talk about up front. I also do, personally, I do a lot of public finance, like tax increment financing situations, tax abatement, revolving loan funds, when you have cities that have, for example, I'm working with a city right now that has a downtown that has some property owners who'd like to make some changes and improvements, and they're not able to with their current situation, and we're stepping in and helping set up a revolving loan fund with some excess TIF revenues that a city has. So I have experience doing that as well. I saw you had an economic development authority as well. And I've set those up for some cities, including Lakeland, and we're about to set one up in Glencoe as well. So that's another economic development tool that you have, and you already have an EDA, I know. So I have some experience dealing with development agreements and contracts with EDAs. So that's a nice benefit that the city can tap into and not have to refer that sort of work out to different firms downtown or where have you. So I don't want to step on your toes here, but
No, we're happy to have the opportunity to submit our proposal. As Andy indicated, we've got a number of communities that share many similar attributes with Montrose. It's sort of how we've made our living out on the east side, and we've expanded our municipal practice to East Bethel, up in Anoka, Wyoming, up north, and then with Andy's addition of the firm a couple of years ago, outstate and throughout the state, really with the public finance and municipal work. I think the significant advantage that our firm has to offer a community like Montrose is the fact that we have attorneys that practice in different areas. And so whether it's your primary civil attorney working with you on your day-to-day operations and the day-to-day challenges facing the city, whether it's an employment law issue that comes up with one of your employees, whether it's a public finance project that you may want to finance in planning for the future, whether it's an economic development issue that your EDA is working through, whether your community finds itself in litigation, which we hope never to happen, but often things come up that you have to deal with. Our firm having 15 attorneys or 14 attorneys and soon to be 15 here in a few days, all of our attorneys touch the municipal practice in one form or another. We also do criminal prosecution for a number of our cities, the vast majority. The reason I bring that up is because we're experienced in working in zoning enforcement, which in small communities is often a challenge as well. When you're trying to deal with the landowner that just won't comply with your ordinances. You've got to have a city attorney, a civil side city attorney who knows how to work with the prosecutor to make a determination as to whether you should be issuing citations on the criminal side or whether you should be taking action on the civil side as well. So there's a real significance in having experienced counsel work with you and in having experts work with you in the various areas, because we've seen too often attorneys try to sort of take everything on and they struggle because they don't have the experience in a particular area. Whereas our firm, the way we've developed it for the particular purpose of having that comprehensive team approach that we can offer to our communities. That's why we brought Andy in a few years ago on the public finance side, because we saw that other firms, specialized firms, were providing that service to our communities, and we wanted to be able to do that. That's why we've got an attorney who's very, very strong on labor and employment issues, so that he can come in and he can work with the city administrator, he can work directly with the council on those particular issues. But that's really our approach and our philosophy, and we think we can add some value to what you're doing here in Montrose, and we think we'd be a great fit to serve as your city attorney.
The thing I would add to what Nick was saying was we could have probably brought about 8 attorneys up here to all stand up here and talk to you, because it's likely that you'd have that amount of attorneys that are going to deal with your staff and public officials on a almost day-to-day basis, depending on what you have going on. I don't think that I can cover all bases as an attorney in the real world out there. If there's something that comes to me, an employment law question, I know I'm not going to have the ability myself to deal with that, because I can't be everywhere. I can't know everything at once. I can't have my fingers on everything. So that's where we hand it over to our employment law counsel. We work with him, but it doesn't matter to me if he would call the administrator, depending on how your policies are of conduct. It doesn't matter to me if he calls her back and settles that issue. It's more efficient for the city to do it that way. Also, as Nick mentioned, the area between civil and criminal. I put in my materials, we do various educational services for cities. One of the nice things that we did last year was a team up between myself on the civil side and then a prosecutor at our firm to go on the road in a couple of our cities, and then we actually hosted one for a number of our cities as well, and we talked about zoning enforcement 101 basically. So we hosted administrators, clerks, and building officials, and police as well, and just sort of talked about the various issues that you're going to see, whether it's a dangerous dog issue that can be converted into a criminal issue, zoning enforcement matter, to kind of give them to the tricks of the trade, the tools that we use, and we just provided that as an educational experience. I'm interested in getting some public finance materials out there as well. I do like a monthly email blast about various issues that have come up that may be of interest to cities, and one of them was recently there was a case where you don't need a referendum for certain public facilities, which was sort of a contentious case in Forest Lake. So I just blasted that out to my clients to let them know about that. So and those are things that we're not billing for that. It's just things that we want our clients to know about, because we kind of feel like we're partners with them in their day-to-day activities. So.
Well, the last thing I really want to stress is the fact that we want, more than anything, we want to act as a resource for our clients. And that just doesn't apply to our municipal clients, but also to our business clients and our individual clients. But we want you to pick up the phone. We want you to make the call. We're not going to bill you for the odd phone call. We're not going to bill you if you just have a question. We like to encourage our clients to call, because the last thing that we want to happen is for you to have an issue, for you to pick up the phone and go, boy, is Sandy going to bill me for this? Nick going to bill me for this? That doesn't do you any good. It doesn't do us any good. And so we want your city administrator to feel as though she can contact us. We want, if the council is determined that it's appropriate for council members to speak directly with the city attorney, we want those calls to come in, because we want to know what the issues are. We want to understand them, and we want to be able to help you address them. To that end, you see in our proposal that we've offered a couple of different options. The first is a flat fee retainer type option. The second is an hourly option. We're not particularly wedded to either, although we've got communities that sure like the flat fee option because they know exactly what they're going to pay on an annual basis. And we've got others that say, in some months it might be heavier, and others it might be lighter, and so we just want to be billed at the time that we actually use. And that's fine as well. Every community is different. What I will say is that we're not afraid to have the conversation about fees. And we understand that what works for one of our clients might not work for another. And so we welcome that conversation. We welcome the conversation as to term of the contract, particular rates. We want to do what serves Montrose the best, and you're in the best position to tell us that. We've given you sort of our best guess, and the structures based upon how other communities utilize us. But we're certainly open and willing to have the conversation about fees as you're comfortable.
So we know that you have 7 other firms that you've been in the process of interviewing tonight. So we're here to tell you that we're different in those capacities. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take a stab at them.
You've been with that firm for what, 2 years now?
Yeah, I was actually at Kenny and Graven. I worked there before Eckberg Lammers, so I'm familiar with that firm.
And what was your expertise there?
I was in the public finance area mostly there as well. So the bond counsel, tax increment financing, that sort of thing. And then since I've been at Eckberg Lammers, I've had the 3 cities that I mentioned, Bayport, Wyoming, and Scandia for the times that I've been there. And so I continued with the public finance part. I brought that over to Eckberg Lammers, and then also I'm doing the city attorney, the general, day-to-day representation.
And you're available on the second and fourth Monday of the month?
Right, yes.
Please talk about your office hours.
Yeah, for some of our communities we have that, and it's not necessarily a formal, it can be as formal as you want it to be, basically. We have, in some city, in our largest client, City of Woodbury, we have a designated office and designated hours when we're going to be there. For others, in Wyoming, I go up the afternoon of the council meeting, usually in the mid-afternoon, and have the staff meeting, and I'm there at City Hall. And it's a smaller staff, obviously, than Woodbury, so we're accessible on anything that comes up that they need to have a face-to-face meeting about, and that's perfect, and I'm there. Scandia can work like that as well. So I was more feeling of the latter perspective for here, so I'd be open to that. It could make sense to be on the afternoon of a meeting since I'm out here anyway.
And that's at, would be the same $150 an hour.
Yeah, and if there's nothing going on, I mean, I'd be happy to bring my laptop and, or my paperwork and do other things as well, so there's no shortage of things to do.
What about time to get up to speed? If you guys did, how would you charge us to become familiar with Montrose?
I know on your schedule, you have a possible appointment and actually working on the city's affairs pretty quickly. In Scandia, we had that turnover where it was about a 3 to 4 month transition. So we just put a fee out there to go to the meetings in the transition, talk to the staff. It was I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but it was a lower, yeah, a couple, to cover a few months. So if there's something substantive we're working on, I think right away, then we would start that process of opening the files and everything. But generally when and I'm newer to the firm 2 years ago, but I like to meet who I'm going to work with and just get to know what's going on and what the current issues are, and obviously that's not a charge.
If it's a rapid transition where we're getting into the files right away, we're not going to charge you for our education. Because we're getting into the files and we're starting to work on those, we're going to bill you for the work that we do on the files. But reading back into the files, figuring out what's going on and what needs to happen, that's our responsibility.
And from a dollars and cents standpoint, maybe that hurts me more because I like to have more context and more background than maybe the usual person does, probably than Nick needs. But that just helps me get comfortable. So that's just going to happen.
You had talked about the training sessions, your seminars. How would that work? Is it free of charge? It's depending on what you see as a need or what we feel is a need, or?
Yeah, I think, for example, the zoning enforcement one that I mentioned,
Yep.
I viewed that as an educational piece for myself as much as the municipal clients who were there. I got to learn a lot about a lot of our cities and meet staff that I hadn't even met before. So I think that's made my representation stronger down the road. So I think that, quote unquote, pays off down the road to have those things. So I don't envision charges that go with that because I'm not working on a specific file. I'm not creating new work product. I'm trying to give a value to the city and I get one back as well.
Just to confirm, no travel time expense.
That's right.
No mileage expense.
No.
And I pretty much understood phone calls and emails are invited and
Right.
no charge unless they're excessive.
Well, I mean, and we haven't found that to be excessive,
Okay.
and we found it to be a good fit. And certainly, then if there's direction to begin on something, then that's when obviously we start that. But
And the way I really view it is that if there are emails that then require us to open a file on our end, or if they're substantive on something that we're working on, that's one thing. But if you're calling or emailing to ask questions to get an understanding of the council packet of a particular issue, you're not going to see any charges for those activities.
We've been doing and looking at all our ordinances and stuff like that. What kind of, I see that you have drafting and revision of new ordinances. What can you say about that?
I actually was at a work session earlier tonight in Bayport where they're going through an ordinance redo with an eye towards seeing which ordinances are sort of outdated for like a zoning enforcement action, like a nuisance situation. So whether you have something like that in your community in Montrose, I was working with the city administrator tonight on figuring out, okay, how do we clearly say in your ordinance what's going to be a violation and what are residents going to be able to organize their affairs around, and how can we implement that? So that's going to be working with all the stakeholders, the residents, but also the city staff. I know that you don't have a separate police department here, but Public Works, anybody who's going to be out in the front lines on that building inspection as well. Excuse me. So I'm fluent in working with those people on that. I personally like to draft things, and I'm more of a transactional lawyer. I don't get into court too much to argue things. I prefer the other side of it, so that I think plays more to my strength.
We've worked with other clients and completely copied their ordinances. So we've taken a book of loose leaf ordinances and we've worked with codification companies to get them into form that makes sense for the communities. Other communities look to tweak ordinances that they already have, you know, or maybe you're drafting a new ordinance that you don't have. We drafted significant adult use ordinances, we drafted significant zoning ordinances, we've worked on subdivision ordinances. So, you know, we've seen a lot, and we've worked start to finish through those processes, and whether it's Andy or whether it's somebody else at the firm, we can certainly help you work on it.
Also, just to confirm, no Westlaw research charge?
No.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew MacArthur. Evening. My name's Andrew MacArthur. I'm with the MacArthur Law Office in Anoka. I'm a one-person law office up in that city. I currently work with Corey and Rupi, I think, which has been here earlier today, interviewing for the position. I have worked with the city of Montrose in the past, probably about 15 years. I was involved with the city during when the big developments occurred. We did a lot of the developers agreements for some of the developments around here. Did the annexation agreements with the surrounding townships. Did the joint agreement with the city of Waverly for its sewer system and those types of items. So I am familiar with the city of Montrose and know some of the issues that the city's had during the course of the last 10 to 15 years. I'm currently the city attorney for the city of Otsego. I've been the city attorney there for approximately the last 25 years. I'm currently the city attorney. And I'm the city attorney also for the city of Dassel. Do you want me to proceed, or do you have questions? Okay. I'm making the application to try to work with the city. I would indicate that I did put in my application that I do have an ongoing conflict on the meeting dates. So I would not be available for every city council meeting. However, I would do whatever I could to be available at council meetings when needed. Some of the small cities and townships that I work for, it's not unusual for me not to appear at all the meetings. In those cities and townships, and each city and township has its own philosophy. I mean, some of them want you to show up at every meeting. For instance, up in Dassel, I maybe show up for a meeting once a year if they have a particular issue. I know some of the issues here, you may want someone more often than that, but I can try to arrange that. Typically, I go to every city council meeting in Otsego, but sometimes they don't have that much on the agenda, so I could arrange it. And I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
How do you charge for, like, if we're calling you, email you, travel time?
Typically, we charge it, I put down there is $150 an hour. What I try to do is try to average it out so that there's a certain number of no charges on bills. In other words, I'd like to try to keep in communication with the city as much as I can. I have worked with a number of townships in the past, and because of the nature of townships, they're very reluctant sometimes, and smaller cities, sometimes to talk to the attorney because they believe that every minute. So in fact, I worked once with a township where I couldn't understand why the clerk would talk really fast all the time, every time. And it was for exactly that reason. So what I try to do is, if it's, I like to keep track of what's going on. If I have a conversation with the clerk, and it's just kind of like to keep me up to date as to what's going on,
typically, if that's a 15-minute conversation or something like that, I would kind of no charge 50% of those. If it's a real pertinent issue, it would be charged at the regular rate. Typically, I know every city wants to be different. Typically, we try to charge in the quarter hours. I know up in Otsego, they insist that I charge at a tenth of an hour, which I do, which makes it hard for me to figure sometimes.
Do you offer any kind of training sessions at all?
Yeah, normally for the cities that I work for, I try to offer once a year to do a training session on the open meeting law, new updates in the municipal law, things like that. Typically, I've tried to do those sessions with either a separate one with the council, and then a lot of times, I believe I've done a couple of them in Montrose too. We've tried to, you have the planning commissions and other commissions, particularly the planning commission, because their decisions are, legally speaking, the record for a lot of the planning and zoning items. So we like to have free training sessions for them, and I usually would offer that once a year. Sometimes we do them twice a year. Those are usually free of charge. I would say the council has tremendous patience if they spent the whole last couple of hours interviewing attorneys.
What about travel time?
Travel time, normally, for most of the cities I work for, I usually work on a flat fee for meetings, and usually $200 or $300 per meeting, which includes all, I don't add travel time onto that. Typically, what I would do with travel time is I charge usually like half the rate. If I would come to a meeting that there would be no travel time, it would just be flat fees, whatever it is. And if it was a meeting to come up here, I usually end up charging maybe half an hour for travel time, up and back.
So a council meeting would be a flat rate, not the hourly.
Correct, that's the arrangement I have with all the other cities I work for. And that's negotiable, it's usually $200 to $300 per meeting.
Did you have experience then working with EDAs and HRAs?
Yeah, I do have experience with EDAs and HRAs. I worked with the EDA up in Otsego, for instance, and we just recently are doing some very large industrial Duke Realty's doing a 300,000 square foot building up there and doing tax evasion and working with the EDA on that. So I do have experience with that, yes.
Anybody else with questions?
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
All right, I appreciate that.
Kenny, you very much are the team.
Hi, everyone. Say hello. Introduce myself. You all know me first. Before I get, and I'll try to keep this brief, since you're all familiar with me and Kenny Raymond. You've been the city attorney for Montrose for the last 2 years. Before I get started, I just want to say that I have a great deal of respect for, I don't know everybody on the list here tonight, but I do have a great deal of respect for a number of my colleagues sitting here in the audience. And I think that you should choose an attorney chance to serve you and work hard for you. I would like to be that person, but there are a number of people who are well qualified to do that job. I think that I'd like to talk just a little bit about Kennedy and Graven, because a number of you were not on the council when we were first hired as a city attorney. I think that keeping Kennedy and Graven as your city attorney has a lot of benefits. Kennedy and Graven practices primarily in the area of municipal law. And one of the benefits, I think, is that I work with a number of attorneys who literally have decades of experience working in this area. So, and in all aspects of municipal operations. So I think that the service that I can provide, the service that my firm can provide, is extremely efficient in that I can speak to an attorney about a bond issue or a development contract issue or a bankruptcy issue, something that I might not be as familiar with as somebody else, and get an answer very quickly back to you at the least amount of cost to the city. So I think that's a great advantage that we have over a number of other firms who may not have the same breadth and depth of experience that we have in the municipal arena. I think that our rates are competitive. I've set out our fee proposal in the written proposal we provided to the council. As you know, we have been using a retainer for the last couple of years. That seems to work out pretty well. That's something that I'm completely open to discussing with the city. Frankly, the workload has dropped off, I think, fairly significantly. And it might be that going to an hourly rate would be a better option for the city right now, unless things pick up and you see more development or things are happening in the city. But I've seen in the last couple of months that the workload has dropped off a little bit, and so you might want to consider looking at an hourly option. And that's something, again, that is negotiable, and I'm open and flexible and open to discussing rates with the city. We, of course, want to remain competitive with people who are seeking this position. A little bit about me, for those of you who don't know me that well. Personally, I have been working in the area of municipal law. I'm going into my 20th year, actually. I started as a law clerk at the League of Minnesota Cities in my second year of law school, which was in 1994. So I've been working with cities ever since then. Worked full-time as a law clerk at the League for 3 years, and then they hired me as a defense attorney. I worked there for about 4 years and started with Kennedy and Graven in 2001, and I've been there ever since. As you probably know, working with me the last couple of years and also working with other attorneys, that you are not always going to get the advice that you want to hear from your attorney. And quite frankly, if that's how all of us operated, we probably wouldn't keep our licenses to practice very long. My job, and I think my colleagues would probably concur, that our job is to give you the best legal advice that we can, to help you and to sometimes keep you out of trouble. If you want to have an attorney who's going to tell you what you want to hear at all times, you probably shouldn't hire me, because that's not the way I operate. I would be happy to answer any questions. Again, I know that you all know me fairly well, so if there's any specific things that you want to address tonight, I'd be happy to do that.
Can you explain that retainer? What's all in?
The retainer, as it's been, I think, since the beginning, right, Barb, that we set up the retainer, has included pretty much all of the work associated with preparation for meetings, coming to meetings, drafting and amending ordinances, day-to-day calls from administration or public works. We have had some personnel issues that we've dealt with over the past couple of years that have fallen outside of the retainer. But pretty much most of the day-to-day stuff that we deal with and the phone calls that I get have fallen into the retainer. And I think I've described, I know in the agreement that I currently have with the city, it describes the scope of work for the retainer and the things that fall outside of that. We really haven't had a lot of, other than the personnel issues that we've been dealing with, or if something unique comes up, like working on a franchise agreement or something like that. We have, I think most of the work has fire department. I'm sorry, the fire department. And the fire department work has fallen outside the scope of that retainer as well. But, you know, again, these are all things that are certainly open to further discussion. If the council would like to see some changes, I'd be more than happy to discuss that with the council.
So you're saying that phone calls, emails, all that kind of stuff is within the retainer fee?
Most of the time it will be, unless it's on a subject matter that would fall outside the scope of the retainer.
Do you have an example?
Well, if we are, I would say something that we're working with a developer, negotiating a contract, that might be something that would fall outside the scope of our retainer work. We're dealing with an employee discipline matter. Those personnel kinds of issues would fall outside the scope of the retainer. Again, we haven't had a lot of those issues yet, but those would be a couple of examples that I can think of.
This will like email or a call about meeting procedure would be outside the scope. You said that, you stated that you propose regular meetings with the mayor and designated council members to keep lines of communication open. Would that then fall in the scope of the?
Absolutely, yes. And I think that I proposed that. I think that I had discussions with a couple of you about the possibility of setting up those kinds of meetings on a more regular basis. I think that would be a good idea. I know that you've set up some committees. You have your personnel committee now, which has been meeting regularly. And I know with a number of my other clients, I do meet on a regular basis with, and it's usually with staff, but it's certainly when we're working with smaller cities, quite often there will be more interaction directly with council members. And so it's, I think, a good idea to keep those lines of communication open. And so that's why I'm proposing that as an idea, as an option. But yes, that would absolutely, if you decided to go with a retainer agreement again, that would fall within that.
That's my next question, is how would that change things in the interest of keeping costs down if we went to an hourly rate?
Well, we would have to look at that. Perhaps if we set up more meetings between council and staff, and there will also now be a second meeting every month. The way I understood the proposal was that you wanted the attorney at both meetings every month. Currently, I've only been attending one meeting, and again, I did not increase the proposal for my retainer amount, taking into account the fact that the workload has dropped off somewhat, but I was considering, I left it the same, keeping in mind that we would perhaps increase the staff meetings and meetings with council, as well as adding another meeting to the month. So that's why I propose keeping the retainer amount the same, thinking that there would be some additional work added because of those extra things.
How do you see the working relationship between the city attorney and the city council and city staff?
Just as a concept, or how do I see it as
Any
working?
kind of conflict of interest, anything like that, between council and yourself or city administration, city staff, anything?
If I'm understanding your question, I don't think that I have any specific conflicts of interest at this time. I think my role as city attorney, as I think I've described to the council in the past, is representing the council, but I also represent the city as a whole, including employees. And I don't represent any individual council members, I represent the city as an entity. And so I don't believe that at this time I would have any conflicts of interest that would prevent me from acting as your city attorney.
And it's been discussed with Westlaw, with all of the other attorneys. We charge $3. Do you charge for that?
You know, Councilmember Otto, I need to check with my administrator on this, because my understanding, when I heard the others talking about Westlaw, my understanding of the way that we have Westlaw set up is that we, the firm, we pay a set amount. I think it's a monthly charge, and that clients are not billed individually. So I need to follow up on that for you, and I can let Barb know on that, because I apologize, but I'm not exactly clear how that works. But I think that we pay a flat fee, the firm pays a flat fee, and then those costs are not passed on to the client. If I learn something differently, I'll let you know.
What about training sessions?
I would be more than happy to offer training sessions to the council. I think when I first started, we did have some discussions at some of the early council meetings about things like open meeting law, gift law, data practices, some of those laws that are good for council members to become familiar with up front when they first get elected. I would be more than happy to do refresher training sessions on that, and that is definitely work. Again, if you decide to go with a retainer, that would fall within the scope of that. And I can do that on an as-needed basis and upon council request, anytime you feel it would be necessary or appropriate.
What's the response time for any questions or concerns that we have? So like if we discussed not having attorneys at all the meetings, so if there was a question that we had, how long would it take for a response to come back?
I can almost always get a response back to the city. Sometimes it will be the next day. But again, that's one of the benefits of having experienced partners in my law firm is that if I'm not there, we have designated people as backups, and Barb has contact information for people at my firm whom she can call directly if I'm not available. I'm happy to answer any more questions, but I do want to say that regardless of your decision after tonight, I really have enjoyed working for you, and I've enjoyed being your city attorney the last couple of years. And I think that we worked through successfully through some pretty challenging issues the last couple of years, and at least for me, I can say that that's been a satisfying experience, and I just wanted you all to know that, regardless of what your decision is tonight.
One more thing, do you have EDA experience? What do you have there?
The Meeker County HRA actually is my client, so I've been their attorney for about the last 5 years, I believe, maybe longer. I don't go to their meetings regularly, only on request. so I do have some experience working with the HRAs. Thank you. Sure.
We'll take a 10-minute break.
They just don't do that.
Okay.
They just don't do that.